There are lives that rise above time and circumstance, stories that carry the strength of entire generations. Maya Angelou's journey was one such story. She was more than a poet, more than a singer, more than a voice of protest. She embodied resilience, turning silence into language, suffering into art, and personal battles into universal lessons. Her life reminds us that no matter how harsh the world may seem, the human spirit can still soar. Today, we will walk through her extraordinary journey, not only to understand Maya Angelou as a literary icon, but as a woman who proved that courage and creativity can change history. Stay with us until the end, and let yourself be inspired. Maya Angelou was born Marguerite Annie Johnson in 1928 in the segregated South of the United States, in St. Louis, Missouri. Her early years were turbulent, defined by instability and separation. When her parents' marriage collapsed, Maya and her brother Bailey were sent alone on a train to live with their grandmother in Arkansas. This grandmother, Annie Henderson, would become a source of strength, teaching Maya values of resilience and dignity in the face of poverty and discrimination. But Maya's childhood was also marked by a painful event that deeply affected her. After this difficult moment, she withdrew into herself and stopped speaking for almost 5 years. Believing that her words carried consequences she could not control, young Maya chose silence as her only refuge. For a child, it was a heavy burden to carry, yet it became a turning point in her journey. Silence, however, did not mean emptiness. During those years of quiet, Maya became an attentive listener and an avid reader. She devoured literature, memorized entire passages of Shakespeare, Paul Laurence Dunbar, Edgar Allan Poe, and Black writers whose voices resonated with her own experience. She discovered that words had the power to shape emotions and give meaning to what seemed unspeakable. Her silence, paradoxically, became the training ground where a future writer was being forged. When her voice finally returned, it carried an intensity that had been born from reflection and observation. From the stillness of those years, Maya emerged with an inner world rich in rhythm, cadence, and imagination. The young girl who once doubted her own voice would grow into a woman whose words healed, inspired, and liberated countless people across the globe. When Maya's voice returned, it did so with the urgency of someone who had discovered the profound weight of silence. As a teenager, she began to express herself not only through words but also through dance, music, and performance. She absorbed the rhythm of jazz, the movements of African dance, and the spoken word traditions of her community. The stage became her sanctuary, a space where she could embody freedom even when the world denied it. In her late teens, Maya moved to San Francisco, where she became the first African-American woman to work as a streetcar conductor. It was a small victory, but one that reflected her determination to break barriers. Soon after, she immersed herself in the performing arts. She studied dance with legends such as Pearl Primus and Katherine Dunham, and began touring internationally. Her performances combined African and Caribbean influences with her own magnetic presence. She was tall, striking, with a commanding posture that radiated strength even before she spoke a word. During this period, Maya also became a mother. At the age of 16, she gave birth to her son, Guy Johnson. Becoming a young single mother was not easy. She worked tirelessly to provide for him, taking on countless jobs while never abandoning her artistic dreams. Guy became her anchor, and she often described him as the reason she fought so hard to rise above adversity. Motherhood gave her life both grounding and direction, reminding her that survival was not only a personal quest, but a responsibility for another's soul. Her artistic career flourished. She traveled to Africa, performed in calypso productions, and sang in nightclubs, embodying a new cultural confidence that resonated across continents. In Ghana, she connected deeply with Pan-Africanism, forging friendships with leaders like Kwame Nkrumah and even Malcolm X. These experiences transformed her sense of identity. She was not only an African-American woman from the South, she was part of a larger global struggle for justice and dignity. This fusion of art, motherhood, and activism was the foundation of Maya Angelou's voice. She was not simply entertaining. She was telling the story of survival, of heritage, of hope. Her performances were not escapes from reality, but declarations of presence. In every movement, in every note, she was saying, "I am here, and I matter." At only 16 years old, Maya Angelou became a mother. Her son, Guy Johnson, entered her life at a moment when the world seemed overwhelming, yet his presence gave her a new sense of purpose. As a young single mother, she faced daunting challenges. Providing stability was not easy, and Maya had to work tirelessly, often taking jobs that had little to do with her artistic dreams. She cooked, cleaned, danced, and performed whenever opportunities arose, always with one goal in mind: to give her child a better life. Motherhood forced Maya to balance responsibility with ambition. There were nights when she came home exhausted from performances, only to wake up before dawn to care for Guy. She often said that her son gave her life meaning, becoming the anchor that held her steady in turbulent seas. Through him, she understood that survival was no longer about her alone. It was about building a foundation for the future. During these years, she developed an incredible work ethic. She would say yes to opportunities, no matter how uncertain or small, and transformed each into a stepping stone. Maya began performing in clubs, showcasing her voice and presence. She experimented with calypso and African dance styles, soon becoming known for her energy and charisma on stage. Audiences were drawn not just to her beauty and elegance, but to her undeniable authenticity. Motherhood did not limit Maya. It expanded her horizons. With her son by her side, she learned resilience in its most practical form. She adapted to whatever circumstances demanded, carrying her child with her as she carved out a place in the world. What could have been a moment of limitation became the very reason she pushed forward. Guy was not only her son, he was the living symbol of her determination to rise above hardship and to transform obstacles into opportunities. As Maya Angelou's artistic career developed, her horizons expanded far beyond the borders of the United States. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, she traveled internationally, performing and immersing herself in cultural exchange. Africa became a pivotal chapter in her life. She lived in Ghana, where she connected deeply with the ideals of Pan-Africanism, a movement that celebrated the shared heritage and unity of African people worldwide. In Ghana, Maya found a home that embraced her. She taught at the University of Ghana, worked as a journalist, and became a respected cultural figure. Her presence was magnetic, her voice commanding. She built friendships with influential leaders, including Ghana's first president, Kwame Nkrumah. She also forged a bond with African-American thinkers and activists who had sought refuge in Africa, among them W.E.B. Du Bois. These connections expanded her understanding of the global fight for dignity and freedom. During this time, she also became close to Malcolm X. Their shared vision of empowering people of African descent brought them together in an alliance that bridged continents. When she eventually returned to the United States, she carried with her not only the rhythms of African culture, but also a sharpened sense of justice. She saw the struggle for civil rights in America as part of a global movement, interwoven with the fight for independence and recognition across Africa. Maya's time in Africa also refined her identity as a writer. Surrounded by storytellers, poets, and artists who wove history into art, she began to see her own voice with new clarity. She realized she was not simply performing for entertainment. She was carrying history, embodying heritage, and transmitting resilience. These years abroad gave her the perspective to transform her personal story into universal art. When she left Ghana, Maya carried more than memories. She carried a profound awareness that her story, though rooted in the United States, belonged to the world. The woman who had once lived in silence now spoke with a confidence that reached across oceans. Africa gave Maya Angelou a deeper sense of belonging, and that sense of belonging would echo through the pages she would soon begin to write. By the late 1960s, Maya Angelou was ready to translate her life experiences into words. She had danced, sung, and traveled across the world, but it was through writing that she would leave her most lasting mark. Encouraged by the novelist James Baldwin and supported by editor Robert Loomis, she began to put her memories onto paper. The result was her groundbreaking autobiography, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, published in 1969. This book was revolutionary. In it, Maya shared her childhood, her struggles, and her growth with an honesty that stunned readers. She did not embellish her experiences to make them more palatable. Instead, she told the truth as she had lived it. Her ability to weave pain and beauty, despair and hope, gave her work a raw authenticity. Readers across the globe felt seen in her words. The title itself became a metaphor for resilience. The bird sings not because it is free, but because it must find freedom through song. The success of the book established Maya as a writer of extraordinary power. It was nominated for the National Book Award and quickly became a staple in schools and universities. More importantly, it gave a voice to those who had long been silenced. Young Black women, in particular, saw themselves reflected in her story. Maya showed them that their voices, too, carried weight and meaning. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings was only the beginning. Over the years, Maya would write a total of 7 autobiographies, each capturing different stages of her life. Her prose was poetic, her voice unwavering. She proved that literature could be both personal and political, intimate and universal. Through her books, Maya Angelou turned her life into a mirror where countless readers could recognize their own journeys. The birth of Maya the writer marked a new era. The girl who had once lived in silence had become a woman whose words could not be ignored. Writing was not just her profession. It was her way of declaring to the world that every life has value, every story has power, and every voice deserves to be heard. Maya Angelou returned to the United States carrying with her the confidence and perspective she had gained abroad. It was the 1960s, a decade marked by great change and the civil rights movement. Maya did not remain on the sidelines. She became directly involved, lending her voice and presence to the struggle for equality. Her friendship with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and her work alongside Malcolm X placed her in the center of history. She helped Malcolm X in his efforts to establish the Organization of Afro-American Unity, which aimed to connect struggles for justice across the globe. She also worked with Dr. King in campaigns that sought to dismantle segregation and open doors of opportunity. Maya was not only a performer or a writer now. She was a bridge between art and activism, a living example of how creativity could serve freedom. But activism was not without risk. Maya faced threats, disappointment, and the heartbreaking loss of friends who were taken too soon. Yet she remained steadfast. Her weapon was her voice, her art, her ability to translate struggle into inspiration. At rallies, in meetings, and on stages, she carried dignity and hope. People listened not just because she was eloquent, but because she lived what she spoke. This period shaped Maya into a symbol of resilience. She understood that freedom was not an individual gift, but a collective achievement. She used her influence to remind people that dignity and equality were not negotiable. Her voice, once silent, now echoed across movements, reminding the world that words can ignite change and inspire courage. By the 1970s and 1980s, Maya Angelou had become an international figure. Her books were studied in schools, her poetry recited at events, and her presence sought after by leaders around the world. She acted, directed, and continued to publish works that captured both her personal journey and the larger story of humanity. She did not confine herself to one role. She embraced all forms of expression. Her poetry collections, such as In Still I Rise and Phenomenal Woman, became cultural landmarks. These works spoke especially to women, affirming strength, dignity, and beauty in the face of obstacles. Her words were simple yet powerful, lyrical yet accessible. People from all walks of life found themselves uplifted by her verses. She gave permission to dream, to stand tall, and to believe in worthiness. In 1993, Maya was invited to recite her poem On the Pulse of Morning at the inauguration of President Bill Clinton. Her performance was broadcast across the globe, her voice carrying hope and renewal to millions. It was a moment that sealed her place not only as a writer, but as a national treasure. Later, she would also be honored by President Barack Obama with the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian award in the United States. Maya Angelou had become more than an artist. She was a symbol of triumph, a reminder that one life, no matter how challenging, can touch countless others. Through her work, she redefined what it meant to rise, to heal, and to inspire. Her legacy was not confined to books or stages. It lived in the hearts of those who found courage in her example. As the years passed, Maya Angelou continued to write, to speak, and to remind people of the value of hope. She taught at universities, mentored young artists, and encouraged voices that had long been silenced to come forward. She believed that storytelling was a form of healing, not only for the one who tells, but also for those who listen. Every lecture, every poem, every interview was infused with her philosophy of resilience. She often reminded people that courage is the foundation of all virtues. Without courage, no other quality could be sustained. Her life was proof of this. From the silence of her childhood to the stages of the world, from the struggles of single motherhood to the honor of speaking at a presidential inauguration, Maya carried herself with unshakable courage. That courage allowed her to transform hardship into wisdom and pain into beauty. Maya's lessons were universal. She spoke about forgiveness, about the need to rise above bitterness, about the importance of dignity in every human being. She encouraged people to embrace diversity, to stand against injustice, and to live fully. Her presence itself was a lesson. Calm, strong, and radiant, she embodied the message she shared. By the time she reached her later years, Maya Angelou had become a grandmother figure to the world. People looked to her not only for poetry but for guidance on how to live. She left behind not just books and poems, but a way of seeing life, a way that insists that even when we are caged, we can still sing. And through our song, we find freedom. Maya Angelou's life was not defined by ease or privilege. It was a journey shaped by silence, struggle, discovery, and triumph. From the little girl who once stopped speaking, she became a woman whose voice touched the entire world. She proved that our past does not determine our future, and that courage can turn pain into art, art into healing, and healing into legacy. Her words continue to remind us that each of us holds power within. The power to rise after falling, the power to stand with dignity when life tries to push us down, the power to sing even when the cage feels heavy. Maya Angelou taught us that the human spirit is unbreakable, and that love, resilience, and courage can light even the darkest paths. As we close this journey, let Maya's story echo in your own life. Whatever cage you may feel trapped in, remember that your voice has value, your story matters, and your courage can set you free. Let her life inspire you to stand taller, speak louder, and live more fully. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the life of Maya Angelou. Share in the comments where you are watching from and what part of Maya's story inspired you the most. Your words, like hers, have the power to uplift and connect. And remember, just like Maya, you too can rise.